Hello and welcome to the GoatCast. This is your host, Darkhorn Goat, and I want to start off by apologizing a little bit. It's been a couple weeks since I've been able to post anything. I haven't had a whole hell of a lot of time. Work's been crazy. A lot going on here at home. Just haven't had a whole lot of time to put anything together. So, for my listener out there, judging from the response to my last video, I don't know if I even have that. I want to apologize. Just haven't had a hell of a lot of time, not enough hours in the day. Got a bit of a bone to pick tonight. Something I'm starting to notice pop up on Twitter and other social media out there. That's honestly, it's a bit disconcerting. And it's kind of scary, actually, is I'm starting to see a lot of the rhetoric that started to pop up in 2016 about how since Bernie Sanders didn't win the Democratic nomination for president, a lot of people are either not going to vote at all or are going to vote third party, or they're saying that, well, Joe Biden isn't far enough to the left for them, just like Hillary Clinton wasn't far enough to the left. Therefore, what's the point in voting for Biden when it's just the same person as Trump and this, that, and the other? Okay, fucking stop it. Fucking stop it. You're comparing an apple to, quite frankly, an orange. No pun intended. Joe Biden couldn't be any more different from Donald Trump, just like Hillary Clinton couldn't be any more different than Donald Trump. Their platforms, their ideologies, everything is completely different. They're not remotely the same. I mean, Joe Biden was there when same-sex marriage became the law of the land and supported it, whereas Trump and the GOP have decried it since the moment the Supreme Court ruled on that. Just pick an issue. Women's rights, abortion rights, minority rights, voting rights, you name it, across the board. They couldn't be more different. If you would just read the Democratic platform versus the Republican platform, it couldn't be any more different. There is no valid comparison that would make them remotely the same. So to say that because Joe Biden doesn't tick every single ideological box for you, he's not worth voting for. Okay, that not only is it ignorant, it's childish. It's childish. That's the only way I can put it. If that is how you're going to determine who's in the White House, is this person has to tick every ideological box, or you're not going to support them. Okay, that's absolutely childish. No one candidate can ever tick every single box for every single person. There is no such thing as a perfect presidential candidate. There is no such thing as a perfect congressional candidate. Perfection is something that is 100% unattainable. Yes, we strive for it. Yes, we strive for an ideal, a goal. But sometimes striving for that goal, okay, we're going to get closer to it over time. But at least in the present, that goal is unattainable. And that's kind of where we're at. Bernie Sanders was far from a perfect candidate. He was far enough left to satisfy the youth vote. But let's face it, the youth vote is only a small piece of the puzzle. You have to look at every demographic. We have to look at minorities. We have to look at uh, people who are middle aged, older voters. Um, you have to look at LGBT voters. You have to look at um, the working poor, middle class, wealthy voters. You have to look across the board. And let's face it, beyond a shadow of a doubt, when you look across all demographics, when you look across every single type of voter, there was one, maybe two, maybe three candidates that would appeal to every voter across the board. And you can narrow it down to Elizabeth Warren, who she's been in there a long time. She started off as a conservative. When she first got into politics, she was actually a Republican. And she still, in a lot of ways, appeals to that conservative voter, having been a conservative in the past. But she moved quite a ways to the left. A lot of people saw her as a female equivalent to Bernie Sanders. Second, you could look at Pete Buttigieg. Now, Pete Buttigieg turned off a lot of voters because of things that were happening in South Bend. He had a lot of issues when it came to race relations. But let's face it, dude is intelligent. There's nobody who was in that field that had the raw intelligence of that guy. I could honestly see him being a great Secretary of State. I could see him being a fantastic Commerce Secretary, some high level cabinet position that could use his intellect, where he could stretch out and make policy and just do what he does very well. And the third candidate that kind of appealed in some ways to every demographic was the guy who ultimately won the nomination, Joe Biden. And like I said, he's the guy who ultimately won. Every other candidate across the board, whether it was Andrew Yang, whether it was Mike Bloomberg, whether it was Bernie Sanders himself, has come out in full support of Joe. Everybody has, across the board. So for these Bernie supporters, and I'm not even sure if they're really Bernie supporters, or if they're bots, or if they're just trying to stoke fear and freak everybody out a little bit and get people to stay home because, oh, Joe will never win because, he can't get the youth vote and he can't get people excited. Okay, bullshit. If you look at the Democratic platform, if you look at the few campaign events that Joe has actually been able to do because of this pandemic that we're sitting in the middle of, Joe has done as much as he can possibly do to try to excite voters. Okay, he hasn't been able to do a lot. He, excuse me, he's trying to play it safe for the sake of, voters for Democrats. He's trying to play it safe because we are in the middle of a pandemic. So things like campaign rallies and campaign events, it's a little bit difficult to host them at this moment because you don't want 10, 20, 30, 40,000 people filling a stadium and a bunch of them showing up next week with coronavirus, sick, dying, whatever. You don't want that. So, pardon me, Joe hasn't been holding campaign events. Now, that's not to say he couldn't do more. there's ways to make videos. There's ways to hold events over Zoom or Skype, um, and try to get in touch with voters, reach voters that way. He did a CNN town hall where um, they had they held it at a drive-in movie theater, so people could drive in their cars and ask him questions without getting close to him. And it was quite successful. Um, I think he said a lot of good things. I didn't see all of it. Again, I've had a lot going on the past couple weeks, but he still did it, and it was still quite successful. Could he do more? Of course. I think with the debates coming up and with the final push toward November 3rd coming up very quickly, I think he's definitely going to have to step it up and, try to do some things and say some things to try to get voters excited. But I honestly feel like he's doing everything he can given the circumstances that we're living in right now. So as far as these supposed Bernie supporters saying that, oh, I'm going to sit it out, or I don't think people should vote for Joe Biden. I think they should vote third party or whatever. Okay, I'm just going to say it. Go fuck yourselves. Okay? Because if you're going to be that childish because your candidate didn't win, if you're going to be so childish that you're not going to get behind the person that your candidate is getting behind, okay, you have no right to complain about anything over the next 4 years. No matter what happens, Trump could drop a 15 megaton nuclear bomb over Arkansas. You have no right to complain over that because you had an opportunity to put somebody in office who would not do something like that, who is the ideological opposite of the person who's in there right now. And you passed on that. Okay, if Trump gets reelected, yeah, it's your fault, period. It is your fault 100%. Because you didn't have the wherewithal to put somebody else there. A viable candidate. And Biden is, if you're on the left right now, he is the candidate. Okay, he is representing the Democratic Party. So if you don't want to get behind him, that's your fault. He doesn't get elected, yeah, that's your fault. So there's that. Gonna move along here and shift gears. Every morning on my drive to work, and I'm not gonna say where that is because I don't give away my location. This may actually give away my location to a degree, but there's a billboard I pass every morning that says something along the lines of, if you vote Democrat, you're supporting socialism, and socialism equals oppression. Whereas if you vote Republican, you're voting for freedom. Okay, that billboard is one of the biggest scare tactic billboards I've ever seen. And it's also kind of one of the biggest loads of bullshit I've ever seen. Okay, I'm going to call it out right here, right now. Because being a Democrat does not automatically make you a socialist. And being a socialist does not automatically mean you believe in oppression. Okay, socialist societies are not necessarily oppressive. If we look at Great Britain, if we look at Spain, if we look at Canada, if we look at other socialist societies around the world, it, socialism is not by its nature oppressive. It's when you get somebody in as the head of state who runs that country like a dictator. That is when it becomes oppressive. Um, Joseph Stalin was very oppressive. He was, some say, a socialist. I would put him more as communist. Um, if anything, he had his own ideology, Stalinism. We covered that in my very first video. Excuse me. Um, yeah, let's face it. A lot of our society is already actually socialist. Okay, taxes, paying taxes. That is a socialist. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? That is a socialist concept. Having a police department, a fire department, roads that are funded by those taxes. That's socialism. Public schools. That's socialism. Um, anything like that. Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. All of these things are socialist concepts. Yet, at the same time, as a society, we depend on these things. We want these things. We want a publicly funded police department. We want a publicly funded fire department. We want a publicly funded health system to some degree. We want, publicly funded roads. We don't want to have to pay a toll to, say, Pepsi or some other corporation just to drive down an interstate. We have that in some states, Indiana, Chicago, where they have sold out the rights to toll roads um, to private corporations. And the costs of these toll roads are skyrocketing exponentially. Indiana alone, for instance, they're raising the price of tolls by 7% every year over the next 75 years. The company that bought the rights to the toll road, they that was one of the conditions, was they got to raise the tolls by 7% every single year. Eventually, got a little bit of cough tonight. My apologies. Eventually, the cost of driving on the Indiana toll road is going to get into the thousands of dollars in roughly 60 to 70 years. It's a 75-year lease. By the time that lease is up, it's going to be over $1,000 to drive from one end of the toll road to the other. That far outstrips inflation. That far outstrips anything anyone might be able to afford by that point. The highways that run parallel to that toll road are going to get so congested, it's going to be ridiculous because nobody's going to be able to afford to drive on that highway anymore. And the same thing with other toll roads that are starting to lease themselves out like that. They're raising the prices to drive on these toll roads exponentially to make money. That's capitalism. Whereas every other expressway that's out there that is free to drive on, and there's a lot of them, those are publicly funded highways. Our tax dollars fund those highways. And that's something that we all get to enjoy. But that is socialism. That's what that is. Yet the people on the right, the GOP, they automatically equate socialism with Stalinism, with Soviet style government. And that's simply, pardon me again, that's simply not how true socialism is supposed to work. It is not supposed to be a repressive, um, you know, dictatorship where you have secret police forces that watch over the public and all dissent is crushed. If anything, Trump is the one doing that. Trump is the one destroying the freedoms because if you look at his rhetoric over the past few months, I mean, as the protests and riots started around this country, and there's been a lot of those, he's the one calling for these protests to be broken up, and he's the one saying that protesters need to be locked up, and he's the one saying that protesters are thugs and rioters are just thugs, and these people need to be hunted down and locked up like dogs, and all this other crazy bullshit. um that's taking away constitutional rights, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. um it's wrong. It's completely wrong. Now, I don't agree with the rioting. Let me just put that out there. I don't agree with the outright rioting. I don't agree with destruction of property. We need to keep things civil to a degree. I do agree with the protests, mass protests. Um, I think we need to have more events like what took place in 2017, the day after the inauguration, the Women's March that happened in Washington, D.C., and in cities all over the country. Um, I think we need to have more of that. I think that would get a hell of a lot more accomplished than burning down buildings, burning down neighborhoods, burning down downtown areas. Um, I I don't think that's going to end up in the end getting a whole lot accomplished. It does get a point across. I will give it that, but it also presents a bad image. And in order for the message to really get out there and reach people, I just I personally think there's a better way. But I digress from that. Um, Trump is trying to take away a lot of freedoms. There's court cases going on right now where they're challenging abortion rights, and for the first time in a very long time, these court cases are actually getting somewhere. Um, there's court cases out there challenging the Affordable Care Act that are actually getting somewhere. Um, there's court cases out there challenging LGBT rights that are actually getting somewhere. There's court challenges. I mean, the Supreme Court ruled on same sex marriage, made it the law of the land. There's court cases being heard in the circuit court right now challenging that Supreme Court ruling. And there's a very good chance, especially, and we'll touch on this more in just a little bit, especially with the death of Justice Ginsburg and the chance that another Supreme Court nominee could get put through and put on the bench before January, before Biden potentially takes office, if people vote for him. Um, there's a very good chance that, given who the nominees are, the Supreme Court could take these issues back up, and previously decided rulings could be back in play. This is not a good thing. This is far from a good thing. This tramples on the very concept of the Supreme Court. This tramples on the very concept of precedent and constitutionality and law. It tramples on it. It means that whoever's in power can just stack the courts and change things to their liking. And that's not how things traditionally have worked. Traditionally, something was decided, that's it, cut, dry, decided. Um, and, you could challenge individual parts of those laws, or Congress could pass another law or make a constitutional amendment that would overturn whatever that decision was. That's how the process worked. Everything was a process. There were checks and balances in place. Now, did that lead to a lot of bad precedent? Yes. That's what led to, the Dred Scott decision. That's what led to the court saying, many, many years ago that slavery was constitutional. That's what led to, after slavery was abolished, the court saying, well, these people, the African Americans were only 3/5 of a person, which is wrong. Um, they are equal to anyone else. But you see what I'm getting at. That this is not good. That's all I can say is that's not good. So I just spoke a moment ago about Justice Ginsburg, and I want to extend my deepest condolences to her family. Um, what an incredible human being who lived an incredible life. I mean, reached the very pinnacle of her profession, and ruled on a lot of very, very, very important subjects. Women's rights, LGBT rights, just absolutely amazing. And her loss is rippling through our country and even the world right now. Um, but this does raise the possibility that the GOP could, and they do plan to, put forth a new Supreme Court nominee that would it would completely change the face of the Supreme Court for generations to come, especially if there's one of the court candidates. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. It's a female candidate, but she's very young. And she's actually, I want to say the American Bar Association has actually come forth and said, no, she is completely unqualified. That she should not get this opportunity to be on the Supreme Court. I mean, that's just when colleagues of hers are saying that she doesn't deserve to be there. She doesn't deserve to be there. And the other candidates that the GOP have put forth are just as unqualified. But they're conservative, they're right wing, therefore, in their eyes, the rest doesn't matter. But here's the biggest problem of them putting forth a Supreme Court nominee. If you think back to 2016, when Justice Scalia passed away during the election year, Barack Obama, and there was plenty of time before the election for them to take up the issue and properly vet a court candidate. And Congress flat refused to move forward on a nominee. President Obama put forth a candidate for the court, Merrick Garland, who everybody across the board agreed he would have made a fantastic Supreme Court justice. Just he would have been absolutely amazing, very impartial. If you look at his history as a federal judge, he was one of the most impartial judges that there was. Um, he was a man of integrity. He was a man who believed in the law. Just an amazing judge. Everybody in his profession, everybody in Congress, even except for a few, had the utmost respect for him. Very respected dude. Yet the GOP flat refused to even hold hearings on whether or not to confirm Merrick Garland, much less give him an up or down vote. Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, they just flat refused to even acknowledge that he had been nominated. No hearings, no vote, no nothing. Why? Because they saw that, well, Obama, he was a lame duck president. Therefore, given that a new president was coming into office the following year, that president should have the right to nominate a Supreme Court justice to replace Scalia. Okay, absolute bullshit. There was no precedent for it. But whatever, they got their way. They were in charge of the Senate, so they got their way. Fast forward to now, Justice Ginsburg passed away last week, and President Trump is rushing to put forth a Supreme Court nominee, and the Senate is vowing that, oh yes, we're taking up this issue, and this justice will be voted on by Election Day. Okay? Well, number one, typically it takes roughly 90 days of hearings and deliberation before the Senate traditionally votes yay or nay on a Supreme Court nominee. They have to be properly vetted. Their views on every topic that they could possibly be ruling on in the near or even distant future is examined. Okay, everything about them is examined. Personal life, foibles, you name it. It's all put under a microscope to see if there's a chance that this person could be an impartial jurist. There is no way in hell that between now and November, given that it's campaign season, given that the Senate is getting ready to supposedly take a break, given that, in 2016 they refused to examine the nominee. There's no way Trump should be able, before the inauguration in January, to put forth a nominee. Even before the next Congress, the next Congress would take office January 2nd, and there's a very good chance that the Senate next January will be democratically controlled. A lot of Senate seats are in play, including McConnell, including Lindsey Graham, including Senator in Maine Susan Collins. Just a lot of Senate seats in play right now, and there is a very good chance that the Democrats are going to take control of the Senate. So, to ram through a Supreme Court nominee, it's very hypocritical on the Republicans' part, especially when they refused to examine the nominee that was put forth in 2016. Very hypocritical. They are very blatantly putting power ahead of principle. In fact, even in 2018, after Brett Kavanaugh was nominated and confirmed for the Supreme Court, Lindsey Graham sat in a town hall and said, if another nominee comes up during the election year, I will see to it that that nominee does not get examined. Based on what we did in 2016, it is the job of whoever is in office in January 2021 to put forth the nominee, and then we will go through the process of confirmation. He said so, and this was after Kavanaugh was put into office. That's a very important point, because now what Lindsey Graham is saying is, well, because of the way Brett Kavanaugh was treated, he changed his mind. Okay? Horseshit. Okay? Because if he would have changed his mind, he would have changed his mind in 2018 when he was in that town hall. He would have already changed his mind. This is putting power and politics above principle. You don't give a damn about the rule of law. You don't give a damn about precedent. You don't give a damn about principle. You care about one thing, and that is political power. Damn the consequences. Damn the people. Damn what the people want. You care about about power. Political power. That's it. And based on that and that alone, Lindsey Graham has to go. Period. We already knew that. Graham, McConnell, in my opinion, we need a blue wave. And the only way we're going to get that blue wave is if we turn out as voters. Whether, vote by mail, drop your ballot off at a drop box in your county, vote early if early voting is available where you live. And above all, if you don't want to do any of those things, then do like I'm going to do. Get out there on election day and cast your ballot. This country has been moving in the wrong direction for 4 years now, almost. We have to right the ship now, or let's face it, it's highly likely this country is going to just rip itself to shreds. Only we can make that difference. And we have to make that difference. On that note, this GoatCast. If you like what you heard, click the like button. Remember to subscribe. Click that little bell down below there for notifications of when these drop. I'm going to try to do in the future, I think for the next few weeks, up until the election, I'm going to try to knock out 1 to 2 of these a week. I'll do more if I can find the time to do it. It's not always the case, but I'm going to try to do one or two, if not more, of these per week up until the election, and then we'll see how that goes, and see how we're going to carry forth on the channel. I think this is something that I really want to try to grow and try to continue even after the election, regardless of who wins. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.